So, what are you thinking this week? What do you want to read?
I'd like to read some Emily Dickinson.
No.
We read Dogs of Babel.
No.
How about some Emily Dickinson?
No, Emily Dickinson. No. No.
Okay.
No.
Let me think.
No.
Let me think.
No.
Emily Dickinson?
No. I like Emily Dickinson. I think we should read Emily Dickinson. That sounds
Emily
great.
Dickinson.
Emily Dickinson.
I Died for Beauty. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. I'm Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
I've been waiting for this moment for a very long time.
This is like the rebuttal to me making you read Harry Potter.
Shut up and say what it is.
This is different. We are going to be reviewing some poetry this week. Poetry not big on BookTube. We keep pushing things that no one likes.
We want to ruin everything.
In honor of Adrian, we will be reading this week Emily Dickinson's I Died for Beauty.
You want to take it first?
If you'd like.
We're going to do things a bit differently. Since we're doing a poem, we're going to read the entire thing. We're going to do it twice. Each one of us will read it. And then we'll start the actual review. Go ahead, take it away, Salty Dalty.
I kind of want to read in the Emily Dickinson voice.
Fuck yourself.
I died for beauty, but was scarce, adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth. Themself are one, we brethren are, he said. And so, as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names.
Well, I know why you hate Emily Dickinson now. You can't read her.
It's terrible. Carry on.
I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth. Themself are one, we brethren are, he said. And so, as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms, until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names.
You can put emphasis on it however you want. I don't like Emily Dickinson.
It's a beautiful poem.
Now,
Did you have a best line?
I don't know if I could pick a best line. I think if I had to pick, and I want to use two lines, that's the worst part.
Okay, well put them both out there.
For beauty, I replied, and I for truth, themself are one. I think that's the big piece here, is the similarities and the tying together of both beauty and truth.
Okay, I took it a little bit differently. My best line is, he questioned softly why I failed. That's the question.
Okay,
right?
All right.
That's where everything is implicated from.
All right. So we have the poem out there. Everybody's heard it twice. My reading, much more stoic and beautiful.
My reading, a real reading.
Reading. Let's still do 3 good and 3 bad. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
3 good, go.
Okay. This is imagery at its finest. This is picturesque. This is a painting with words. This is great. Wordplay between beauty and truth. I like it. It's a wonderful coupling between the two. This is the essence of Dickinson. I mean, if you're going to read Dickinson, if you read this is what you're going to get.
Absolutely. This speaks on so many levels.
Okay.
Every word and break and punctuation holds something up.
Okay.
Just the language involved feels like incantation. This feels almost like a prayer.
Right.
3 bad things.
It's almost too simple. That's a lot of Dickinson. It's just right there. Short, brief, simple. Emily Dickinson is the world's first emo chick, writing in her diary, complaining about life. And I actually, for the last one, I just didn't write anything, just in loud, angry letters. I said, damn it, it's Dickinson.
Okay, so your second problem with it was that it's just someone emptily complaining about something, and your third problem was it was an empty complaint.
Yes.
Okay, well, if Emily Dickinson was the first emo chick, you're the current emo chick. That's This can be hard to crack. As simple as the wording is, if you cannot pry behind one of those ideas, you can't get behind any of them.
Okay.
To the modern sense and sensibility, this can be distant because it is not about Janet next door. It's about these two people who are ideals.
It's a distant thought.
I memorized this poem in high school. I liked it so much. And immediately, in my mind, I replaced talked with spoke. Until the... Wait. And so as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms. And so as kinsmen met a night, we spoke between the rooms.
Okay.
I like the feel of that a lot better, which is, I mean, just a personal thing, but they're my three bad things. I'm allowed to have it.
So let me dance both sides of this argument real quick. There's always that question, if you could go back in time and kill one person, who would it be? And everybody's like, oh, Adolf Hitler, some atrocious leader. No, the guy who found all these journals and was like, oh, let's publish it. Emily would be so happy. That's mine. On the other hand, I don't like Emily Dickinson. That's well known. Don't hit me with that. I don't like Emily Dickinson. That's well known. You hit me so hard I said I like Emily Dickinson.
I'll do it a couple more times.
But this is a good poem. And she produces some good poetry.
I think that along those lines, this is not a good poem. This is a great poem. And that's why you're allowed to hate it.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying there?
I'm not arguing that Dickinson was a horrible poet who had no literary merit. I just don't care for her. If that makes any sense whatsoever, I'm not trying to pander to you.
There are a lot of people that hate Ernest Hemingway.
Yes. It's similar to that. I can appreciate it. I can say it's great poetry, it's great writing. It's not my thing. I know you just have a love obsession with Emily Dickinson. So.
I quoted Blue Like Jazz by Donald or something Donald, I can't remember right now, in a former video where he talks about how all young men have a love obsession with Emily Dickinson.
Yes.
But I won't go into that now. Let's get into the nitty gritty.
Okay.
We've had the text. We've heard it twice. Let's get in there.
And this is similar to what you would do in a master's program with a piece of poetry.
Well, this is more similar for me to what I did during my undergrad degree when we were talking about literature.
Okay.
Because I did creative writing, so we didn't really get into it on this level, really.
But for those wanting to venture into the academic world, those going to college soon, this is what you're going to get into. Let's talk about this.
How does one die for beauty? Because I know how one dies for truth, and it's never pretty, right?
No, it's never pretty.
When you're dying for truth, think of the Passion of the Christ, right?
Okay.
That's someone dying for what they believed was the truth with a capital T.
Definitely not pretty, though.
How do you die for beauty?
That's an interesting question, and that's the coupling between truth and beauty. If you say that, everybody's like, oh, well, beauty is truth, and truth is beauty, but it's not. It really isn't.
We're not talking about truth in the facts, right?
Yes.
We're not talking about a fact like the War of 1812 was fought in 1812.
But to die for beauty, that's leading to the hint that someone died for a purpose that they thought was beautiful, the beautiful death. Which could be a tragic death. It could have been a death for which the person thought was true. But it's the beautiful... I always go tragic.
Really?
It's the tragic hero.
Well, I think... knowing about Emily Dickinson, what I know, the irony to this line, you're forced to sort of think of someone withering away when they're dying for beauty.
Yes.
They're dying to preserve something, right? Dying for preservation as opposed to truth, which you never hear, stay back and see the truth. You always attack to find the truth, right? Go find the truth of the matter.
Now, you mentioned... a little bit about Dickinson and her personality. This has some lines that push towards the macabre.
Absolutely.
Which at her time was a big deal. That not only is this being written like this, but a woman's writing it. The final lines here, if I may. Until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. That's grotesque. That's dark, macabre imagery. This is the rotting away. This is, going back to the earth. That's something you wouldn't have normally got from this time.
Right, but also when you're going to a deeper level there, until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. What does that suggest? Not only does it suggest a great passing of time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Moss doesn't grow like that, right?
It suggests that they've been forgotten.
Does it suggest that they've been forgotten, or does it suggest that they are the same?
It could have been.
They are anonymous when they're together.
Okay.
Right? What does this also hearken to? Something else that we've read. The opposite maybe of Fight Club.
The opposite.
His name is Robert Paulson. In death, he has a name. In death, these two are anonymous.
Okay.
In death, these two are the same. They have no names.
All right. Oh, that's kind of a comment on humanity, though. Because you could be Adrian Fort. You could live your life. I could be Dalton Gentry. I could live my life. But in death, we're the same.
Okay. But does it speak to something deeper in here?
I think so. And again, I think you could harken it back to beauty and truth. I mean, they're ideals that are similar. They're ideals that are opposite. There's so much to it. But in death, it's all the same. Whether you died for beauty or died for truth, you died for the same. And I think that's the similarities that, we brethren are.
Now, along those lines, we're talking a lot about the death in this poem.
Yes.
So I want to ask you something. Where does this take place?
I assumed a tomb.
A tomb or a mausoleum? They're in rooms.
They're in rooms.
Now, what does that suggest?
I would suggest like separate little mausoleums, little buildings. I don't know that.
Well, it would suggest the same mausoleum.
Would it?
Right. They're
Are there
speaking.
multiple-
They're speaking between the rooms,
Okay.
which suggests that it's the same place.
All right.
Which means that these people would be related.
Yes.
Does it not?
For the time, yes. They would have been buried probably in the family mausoleum, tomb, whatever.
So, does this suggest? Okay. So who has mausoleums? Who has?
The rich.
The rich.
The wealthy.
The wealthy. So this suggests that these people are the same family, of the same class. And it's an upper class.
Okay.
These are people who died for ideas.
Okay.
Does this suggest that among human beings, those that are the upper class of wealth are those which hold ideals? As opposed to the rest of the people who just sort of live their lives and aren't willing to die for something.
For this time period, absolutely. That is the suggestion here, I think. And Emily Dickinson wasn't extremely affluent, but she wasn't in poverty by any means. Am I correct?
No, they were probably an upper class.
Yeah.
But she did not live that way. She lived basically in an attic.
Yes, she was the Adrian of...
She was a recluse. You can kiss an ass.
But that does suggest, you are correct, that these people are a little well off.
Right. So if these people are if these people are well off, these are the upper class of humanity, right? These are the people who are willing to die for ideals, are the upper class of humanity. Okay?
Okay.
That's the suggestion maybe being made, or that I'm taking from it. Let me look at something else here. So you've got to think, these are the same people, they're related. People who are willing to die for ideals are the upper class.
Okay.
Of what upper class really means. Not of money, but of humanity, in a humanist sense. So, let's take a look back at the end of that first line and the beginning of the second line. I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb. What does that suggest? Scarce adjusted.
I don't know where you're going at here.
Scarce adjusted might mean recently.
Okay.
I was scarcely there before this guy came in. Or does it mean haphazardly? I was scarce adjusted there. They just laid me down.
Okay.
Abandoned me there. So she was the one that died for, look at me putting genders on things, which is another point that I've got here. But our speaker died for beauty and was scarce adjusted.
Okay.
Died for beauty and just laid in there. The one for truth was laying in an adjoining room.
All right.
So among these ideals, which one do people just cast away?
Beauty.
That which is beautiful.
But that what is true is
Is the same thing.
the same.
So
Okay.
it's just getting around to how a rose by any other name,
Yes.
right?
Speaking of poetry, now I'm sorry to interrupt you here, but I think that is very interesting that you automatically assumed that the speaker was a woman,
Right.
because so did I. because this is written by Emily Dickinson.
Right.
You assume this is Emily talking to herself because she's batshit crazy. But there are no genders. Besides he, truth is a male.
Right.
But beauty is not a woman, not
disgendered.
A male. Disgendered. Now, I think it is interesting that we would automatically assume female, whether that's because Dickinson wrote it, whether that's because beauty is often associated as a feminine characteristic. Well, the man died for truth, the woman died for beauty.
And again, we go back to that, if I may interrupt briefly.
Certainly, please do.
We go back to the idea of how did these people die?
Yes.
You think of dying for beauty as withering away, dying for truth as charging into battle.
Yes. But again, regardless of whether you wither away, regardless of whether you charge into battle, you're the same in death.
For the better or for the worse, do you think?
I think that's kind of a beautiful concept. Now, we were talking a little bit about how the rich and affluent die for ideas. I'm not sure if I can necessarily agree with that, because I believe historically it is the lesser groups, the peasants' revolt, who will die for their ideal. They'll die to, make things better. Now, this would, again, suggest an affluent family if they're going to have a tomb like this. But when laid down, they could be one the same. We don't know, rich, poor, whatever. They are brethren in death.
Does this poem not evoke a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., "A man who has nothing for which he would die is not fit to live"?
Point, yes.
Now, if I may make a point on that.
I hate it when you smile like this because I know it's coming.
This poem is estimated to have been written in 1862.
Okay.
1 year after the American Civil War started. Does that, pun not intended, color this differently?
Possibly, yes. I mean, you could see the death of truth being the old time, the steadfast beliefs in a dated system, and beauty dying for something that they believe in that would change, that would be the beautiful revolution.
She was a Northerner.
She was a Northerner. So that is an interesting concept to bring forward.
Do you see the conversation which springs out of Emily Dickinson?
I have said it again many times. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying this isn't
You
my
have
cup of
called
tea.
Emily Dickinson shit, Dalton.
Yes, in front of a large group of semi-educated people. I said semi because some people were sleeping. One very educated man who got quite the giggle out of it. But that is a really good point. Maybe this is a comment on the time, a comment on the changes. Because if you look at an old stereotypical Southerner, that's what it was. Things are not going to change. It's the way it is. I will die. And be damned if things are going to change. But then there is that northern sympathy, that northern change of mindset where it is beauty. It is more of a renaissance, if you will, a rebirth that they'd be willing to die for. But in the end, it's all the same.
And everyone
we died
died
for what we believed.
So let me take this one step in a different direction. Well, possibly the same direction.
Carry on.
Okay, so you said North and South we're talking about here, right? When you think of the great American sprawl and you think of Southern literature, what comes to mind when you say, what genre? Southern blank. The Southern Gothic?
Okay.
What are Southern Gothics often about? Death?
Okay. Romantic ideal?
The macabre?
Okay.
Would those three words, or would these three words not, just as well describe William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying as Emily Dickinson's I Died for Beauty?
See, now I think you're stretching it here. You're trying to loop me into this. But you do raise an interesting point.
Would they not go great in the same anthology?
Yes, they would.
A Rose for Emily.
A Rose for Emily. I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't. Here's my thing.
Don't know?
Here's
Have an
my
opinion
thing.
then.
Now, here's my question on this. Emily Dickinson, everybody knows the fine story. You know, she wasn't a published writer. She just wrote this. This was her thing. And they were found post-mortem and then published.
Yes.
Would this have changed if an editor had gotten a hold of it and said, how about we just tweak this a little bit here, Emily?
At the time, yes.
So, would she be better or worse?
She would be definitively less recognizable. One of the things that we'll look at the page, one of the things that will stand out very immediately is the long dash.
Oh, yes.
That Emily Dickinson employed quite often.
Every single poem. And they're short poems, and they do use that weird punctuation break that isn't really a canon of this era of poetry.
And very German, she capitalizes nouns.
Yes. Rhyming scheme, not that heavy for classic poetry. Now, I did want to bring this up. Reading classic poetry, you kind of have to develop a taste for it, because if you're given modern poetry, it's almost hard to differentiate modern poetry from prose anymore. Rhyming schemes are stricken out, things are different, but it's always play on word. It's wordplay. Classic poetry is almost rigid rhyme for the majority. Dickinson gets away from that.
Emily Dickinson is who your professors / teachers will hand you when they're talking about slant rhyme.
Yes.
This is who you're going to get to look at.
And I think it's also interesting, Dickinson is one who really was right along the first pioneers of getting away from what I like to call floral poetry. We're not talking about beauty and nature and everything's being great, but we are, but it's disguised as something else.
Okay.
I mean, it's darker.
Well, there's a certain slant of light.
Really?
Don't make me pun off Dickinson, because I'll do it all day.
So, anything else you want to say about old Emily here?
Don't tempt me, because I'll talk for hours about this one poem. Look, we're making the great thrust that poetry is not just a feminine thing, right? Yes. We're putting it out there. We're trying to infuse more poetry into BookTube.
Absolutely.
It's one of our mission statements here. Along that line, if there are any guys watching, our male viewership has dwindled to about 35%. Through Google Analytics, we can look at this. It's creepy. But I can't tell you how much action in a certain field of life I have gotten into strictly from A, memorizing an Emily Dickinson poem, and B, being able to talk about it intelligently. So there is nothing about that to deter a young male from learning about poetry. Is there, Dalton?
It seems like anytime I mention what I did on the weekend, like, oh, I read this fine poem from Dickinson, would you like me to tell you about it? I just get, bitch. So that's my negative aspect of that. Men don't read poetry. For the most part, they don't.
Okay.
I don't think that's fair.
It's not.
Poetry is seen as a feminine ideal. Floral poetry, again, poetry is beautiful. Poetry is wonderful literature.
It can also be the truth.
It can be the truth. There can be so much to it.
Did you see what I did there, though?
Men should read poetry.
Beauty and truth.
Real men read poetry. I think we need to roll that.
I don't know. I don't like putting out real men anything or real women. Just to see how sexist that is, simply reverse it.
Yes.
Real women do this, right?
But it's just something that most men just push it off completely.
It's effeminate.
And that's disappointing, because there is so much that people miss out on because they're just afraid to take that leap and say, oh yeah, I read it.
Quit stalling. I want to know what you rated this.
I was generous. I gave this an 84.
84 is generous?
I gave this 84 closeted attic dwelling whatevers.
All right. I gave this, that's fine, I guess. That's fine. It's more than what I expected from you.
Thank you.
I gave this 1,000 fuck Daltons out of 100. Look, it's even written down there.
It actually is.
I knew where this was going. Did you have a recommendation?
Okay, so I thought about this a lot. And I am a firm believer that if you want to read Dickinson, read Dickinson. Not saying that bad, not saying that's, good. But if you want Dickinson, go read Dickinson. We're going to get into that a lot with poetry. However, if you like Dickinson, and I don't understand why I like this poet and don't like Dickinson, I think you'd like Sylvia Plath.
Yeah.
This is a strong female voice again. Different era. equally as depressing, especially my life stories. Don't read this one in the kitchen. But if I may read a quote.
Yeah.
If I've killed one man, I've killed two. The vampire said it.
You gotta. What poem is it?
Well, I was
gotta throw that out
this
there
is
first.
Daddy from Sylvia Plath.
Well, throw that out there first, Dalton.
If I've killed one man, I've killed two. The vampire said he was you and drank my blood for a year. 7 years, if you want to know. Daddy, you can lie back now. I think there are some hints and elements of that macabre Dickinson in there.
Yeah.
So I think you might enjoy Plath if you like Dickinson. Adrian?
I was tempted to go the cliche route because I'm going to say you should read more Dickinson.
It's easy to do.
I almost went with I Heard a Fly Buzz. I almost went with Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Those are ones you're going to get through education if you're in high school.
Oh, if you're going to college this semester, English 101, you're going to read I Heard a Fly Buzz.
I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heaves of storm. That's the first stanza from I Heard a Fly Buzz. And Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves in immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. That's the first two stanzas from Because I Could Not Stop for Death. But instead, the brain is wider than the sky, for put them side by side, the one the other will contain, with ease, and you beside. The brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb as sponges buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God, for heft them pound for pound, and they will differ, if they do, as syllable from sound. That's the one I think. Now, if you didn't know this, Emily Dickinson poems were not given titles.
No.
So they are known by their first line. So that one is, the brain is wider than the sky.
Because whether you like Dickinson or not, this was a mad woman in the attic just writing poetry all day, every day.
1,775
That's
poems.
insane.
Yeah. One short of 1776.
So,
Right?
If
you want to talk irony,
So we're going to try to do a little more poetry.
Yes.
I can't promise it's going to be coming soon. I'm going to be doing some singular videos, just me talking about poetry a little more. Hopefully we're going to push that a little more on the YouTube machine. If you like this, make sure you subscribe to Strip Cover Lit. That's embarrassing. And let us know down below what you think about this whole poetry movement.
Hit the like button.